afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicole Messiah, and I'm honored to be the DeKalb County Commissioner, District 3, and Chair of PECS, Planning, Economic Development, and Community Services. I serve in this committee alongside Commissioner Longspears from District 2 and Commissioner Ted Terry from District 6. Joining us this afternoon is Commissioner Robert Patrick from District 1 and Commissioner Ladina Bolton from Super Commission District 7. So thank you so much for being here today. We got a pretty full agenda, but we will get through it as efficiently and expeditiously as possible. To start, we have the minutes. The agenda item, if you're following along, is on page 1, ending in 1522. And if you've had an opportunity to review those minutes, I will be open to a motion, please. Thank you.
Motion to approve item 2025-1522.
Second.
Thank you so much. We have a first and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. And we have two appointments. One ends, for the appointment ends in 0992. All commission districts, the reappointment to the Historic Preservation Commission. That's Mr. Dennis McConnell. Is Mr. McConnell here with us today? Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Good afternoon.
Great afternoon. And thank you for being willing to continue to serve in this capacity. Can you start by just telling us just a little bit about yourself, and then we have some pre-printed questions, and then also any of the committee and other commissioners are free to ask any additional questions that they have and see fit. But can you start with just sharing who you are and why you want to continue to serve on this committee, please?
Well, I was appointed by the Greater Atlanta Home Builders Association to serve this board as representative of the builders that build in DeKalb County. I've had about 60 years' experience building houses, so I know a little bit about it. I've been through Historic Planning Commission meetings. I was trying to count them up, somewhere around 200 times.
My goodness.
So I've been there, done that, suffered the pains, and also generally get through them fairly easily. It's common sense most of the time.
Thank you so much for that. All right. Can you share with the committee and the rest of the Board of Commissioners what particular goals or challenges you would like the commission to prioritize during your next term?
Not really. I mean, I'm not going into this with any preset idea of what needs to be done. Again, common sense oftentimes plays the role, and policies change, and we'll change with them.
I appreciate that. You know, I hear a lot, common sense isn't that common. So can you give an example of just a common sense thought or consideration that you believe people should take into the historic preservation?
If you can manage the general theme of what needs to be done, I'll use Druid Hills as an example. There are a number of architectural styles. Surely someone can find one and mimic it enough to get through a board of approval and still meet the common sense of what the community wants, which is something that fits in, and something that is also marketable, and something also that is cost effective. Sometimes it's a matter of using different materials to achieve the same goal.
Thank you so much for expounding on that. I appreciate that. Any of the committee have questions? Commissioner Longspears?
Nice to see you again, sir. Thank you for being with us today. I have two questions. One is on the list, and then another is a question I have. I'd just like to hear your feedback. So the first question is, historic preservation often intersects with new development, which happens frequently in District 2. How should the commission balance preservation goals with community growth and economic development?
It's always a balancing act. What more can I say? But if you use good I keep using that same term, good common sense. If you go about the deliberation of how to achieve a marketable product that will meet the marketplace needs and also the historic needs, it's not terribly difficult. And it starts with understanding where value is, and then how you translate that value to a customer, and then also to the community. The value to the community is a home that fits, or a property, or that fits in with the general architectural styles available in the community. And then from a building point of view, something that fits within the materials that are available, and then how they can best be used to achieve an effect.
Thank you for that thorough response. My second question is, when we have an HPC appeal, commissioners are expected to act in a quasi-judicial capacity, so as a judge, basically. That has been a little bit difficult with some cases in the past. Would you mind sharing your perspective on it? One option that has been floated is, instead of it coming back to us to operate in a quasi-judicial capacities, that instead it goes straight from the HPC up to Superior Court. So if you have any thoughts that you'd like to share on that, I'd love to hear them.
You start with the requirements of Superior Court and go backwards. Literally, I mean, you've got certain tests, as zoning, which is a good example. You have certain things that must be stated in the evidence presented. They must be in a format that people can use and reason with, and that stand the tests, legal tests associated. If you can accomplish that, then that makes your job easier. Here are the facts, and you can judge based on the facts. At your stage, you don't want opinions entering into whether something is pretty or not. You want it to know it doesn't meet the law, doesn't meet the requirements.
Well, thank you for that. It's significantly broader than just being pretty. And the reason I say that is this is the one instance where the commissioners cannot serve as a representative of their constituents, which I found to be very challenging in my first year, because you can't even show up to where the HPC appeal the property and look at it or speak to constituents. Again, in my opinion, it's very difficult to represent when you can't even talk to your constituents about the issue. But thank you very much for your response. Yield back.
Thank you so much, Madam Pio. Commissioner Terry?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I do concur with my colleague. I believe most of the action on this commission is really in the Druid Hills Historic Preservation District. I know we have the Soapstone one, but this one gets all the action because that's where all the building's taking place. So I also have a standard question. Hopefully it's an easy one, and then I just have a small follow-up, Madam Chair. Mr. McConnell, this is just sort of what we ask everyone. And so this is question number 6 on our list. Do you have any financial or personal interest that will prevent your attendance or voting on any matters coming before the Historic Preservation Commission?
I do not, and if I do, I'll recuse myself.
Okay, great, thank you. The other question I wanted to ask your opinion on is we have received some requests from neighbors in the Druid Hills Historic Preservation District area to do certain traffic calming improvements to slow traffic down. And in the past, there's been some pushback that those maybe more modern traffic calming proposals would not actually be in the keeping of the historic district. And so I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on how we balance historic preservation with also, trying to make the streets safer for pedestrians and children.
People have a tendency to think of the world like it's Williamsburg, where you have a picture of time. If you go to Williamsburg, it's between this year, and everything that you see is represented by that. Most of the world does not operate that way. Things evolve. The question is, how do you adapt your evolution to meet the general goals and design of an area? Traffic calming. Good example. We didn't have cars in Druid Hills when it first was built. You didn't need traffic calming. So things evolve, things change, and then you must change with them, but in a way that is conducive to the nature of the area you're trying to protect.
Okay. And just a quick follow-up, Madam Chair. Mr. McConnell, would you want any traffic calming proposals? Would you still want them to be heard by the Historic Preservation Commission for some sort of review, or do you think it's just a totally separate matter?
That's an engineering and traffic safety issue.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. And then just from the benefit of my colleagues, I wanted to just actually mention, because I have met Mr. McConnell on numerous occasions, because I visited the Pendergrass Farm development. That's right, sir. That's one of your proposals. And it's in District 2 and 6. And it's a great example of homes, farms, open space, intergenerational living. That I would encourage anyone who's interested in looking at that kind of type of development. It's a little more sustainable and, a little more back to the earth style, but also modern in its own ways. Please reach out to Mr. McConnell. I'm sure you'll be willing to give him a tour.
Glad to do it.
Thank you. Yield back.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Patrick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a comment. Mr. McConnell is someone who administered an architectural review board as well as a historic preservation board. I've liked everything you've said so far. You have a good grasp of sort of the realities of how it was, how things are today, and how to appropriately put them together. I don't vote on this committee, but I like what you're saying. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Patrick. Commissioner Bolton? All right, thank you so much. We do appreciate you so much for your time, Mr. McConnell, that you spent with us this afternoon. I appreciate you, and staff will be back with you. Thank you so much again.
Thank you. Have a good day.
The next appointment we have is agenda number 1199. All commission districts appoint Mr. Mike Cooper to post 6 of the DeKalb County Public Library Board of Trustees. Thank you so much, Mr. Cooper, for being here with us today, as we do appreciate yourself, as well as Mr. McConnell, for joining us. Just briefly, could you share just a few points about yourself and why you would like to be a part of the Library Board of Trustees here in DeKalb?
Well, I have a history of library usage and a journalism and research background, which has always endeared me to libraries, but I also have a history of county involvement. For some time, I was the community affairs representative for the Little Creek Farm Conservancy and attended meetings of the Park Citizens Advisory Board, and also got Little Creek its first Park Pride grant. I've also been a member of the District 4 Community Council under 2 different commissioners, and maybe even a third. But I also have a knowledge of county government. I've been president of the Friends of the Stone Mountain Sue Kellogg Library for about 10 years now, and I've been a member for 25 years. I've also attended pretty much every meeting of the library trustees in the last 10 years, which has helped me to learn about the library system as a whole and learn about the issues affecting our libraries. And in 2017 and 2018, in my capacity as president of the Friends Group, I was a member of the steering committee for the library strategic plan that was done at the time.
Thank you so much. We do appreciate that, Mr. McConnell, excuse me. Can you also, I'm sorry, my apologies, Mr. Mike Cooper. There we go. I'm looking at one agenda item, reading another one. My apologies, moving too fast.
I'm still catching my breath from watching the meeting this morning, so I understand.
So are we.
And we've been loaded up on chocolates and now gummies here, so we got some sugar in our system here. I appreciate your understanding there. Can you describe your approach to working with fellow board members to create policies that reflect the community's needs and priorities? Speaking of earlier's board meeting.
Well, having watched them, I see who's involved. I see the level of discussion. I have been, different. My knowledge is a little different from other board members, but at the same time, we have, we're lucky to have Ted Reinhardt and Joel Gottlieb as members of the trustees, since they have extensive committee with the county, and I have great respect for both of them. And I don't know what to add beyond that, but I'm certainly capable of functioning in that environment.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cooper. Commissioner Terry?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Cooper, I have a question that's sort of kind of like maybe a philosophical question about libraries for you. So, as the last several decades have, progressed, the DeKalb library system has, really been the gold standard. I think it's been recognized as one of the best in the state, if not the country. But obviously,
Library of the Year in Georgia in 2018.
Yeah, exactly. And for the most part, when you look at where the libraries are and how they're sort of constructed, they're sort of standalone buildings, and they have a parking lot, and if you're lucky, they have some green space or some park space nearby or a pavilion. And so that's sort of looking into the past. But in the future, if there were opportunities for new library construction or even moving libraries per se into sort of a more integrated site that might have housing or retail or other sort of activities as opposed to a standalone library, how would you approach looking at those opportunities, or would you simply support just keeping libraries sort of in a building, by themselves?
Well, that's not a decision for me to make. I think that's a decision for the library system to make and for you guys to also have input on.
Yes.
I think it makes sense to have them accessible and not necessarily be freestanding buildings. And I think I see how to the public, libraries are in a way an entry point for the county because the libraries are there, the librarians are there and can answer questions, not necessarily about county policy, but they are sometimes able to direct patrons to the resources they need to address issues that may be handled by county agencies or state agencies. And I see that being in the library a lot. There's a real value to that they are there for the public. It would seem reasonable to put it where other services are available. I don't think there's any reason that it has to be a freestanding building, but again, that wouldn't be my decision to make, but it certainly makes sense because libraries are a face of the county to the public. I didn't have my smoking pipe to give you a truly philosophical answer.
No, that's great. So basically you're open to ideas. And I think kind of a lot of our questions really are about technology, the community's evolving needs. So I think you answered, the core questions that we have here about how the role the library plays in the community.
Well,
Thank
I was
you.
going to touch on that because libraries have had to adapt because right now, we're at the point now where ebooks account for more than half of the circulation of books in the library. And it's a little bit frustrating for me as a library fan because that actually costs more money to the library system than purchasing books because those ebooks are limited to a certain number of checkouts, whereas, books last for a long time. But you also see how people use the libraries for hotspots and check out laptops. And in fact, I'm proud to say that our Friends group 10 years ago was the first library to have a system, or to basically, we funded our branch having Chromebooks available for checking out to the public. And you see the use and the need for that, especially as more resource materials are online. It used to be 10 or 20 years ago that the comprehensive plan and the DeKalb County Code, physical copies of those were in the library, but that seems to have gone aside because that's available online. So I think the libraries are changing with technology, and I do say that the databases that our library system offers in DeKalb County are far superior to those of Fulton and Gwinnett and our neighbors. So I think the library is well directed in that area and aware of the changes, but I also think there's a personal contact that the librarians make in greeting patrons and having that relationship with patrons that really enhances the relationship but does not preclude the use of technological tools or advancing in that direction.
Absolutely, and thank you for being a pioneer at your library, and I think that program has expanded to other libraries and the hotspots checkout. So it's been a very innovative program that Director Weisinger has led on. So thank you. Yield back.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Long-Spears.
Thank you, Chair Messiah, and very good to see you again, Mike. Thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I have two questions. The first piggybacks off of the conversation that you and Commissioner Terry just had about how libraries have been evolving and then being responsive to the current and then future needs of our residents. So in your opinion, what are the most pressing challenges facing public libraries today, and how can the DeKalb County Public Library best address them? Again, I think you just touched on that a little bit with the example you used about audiobooks actually costing more. But any other challenges you'd like to share with us, in your opinion?
I think I covered the kind of technological aspects. But the major issues, pressing issues for libraries is the looming question of censorship and the threat that we may at one point run into a situation where there are groups that seek to remove books from the libraries, and that has not happened very much in Georgia. It tends to happen more to school system libraries, but it is a possibility. It's happened in Alabama, and it's something that we're aware of. And there is legislation pending in Georgia that would remove the protection given to librarians that prevents them from being criminally prosecuted for giving material that somebody might deem offensive. to certain patrons. And I spoke at the legislature on that issue earlier this year. So that's on our radar. Fortunately, it's not a looming threat. But there's also a funding issue because the federal agency that provides a lot of money for library systems, including the Galileo database that's used throughout the state, has been in jeopardy. The funding seems to have been assured for this year, but it is a major funder of that resource, as well as interlibrary lending and a number of other things that we need to watch out for, because that would be potentially problematic and reduce the services we could provide our library patrons.
Thank you, sir, for that thorough answer, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. My second question, and I don't know if you're even aware of this, I'm just curious about your thoughts. It's broadly been known that Brookhaven has the worst library in our entire library system. The city of Brookhaven did launch a survey roughly a week to 10 days ago, asking residents to comment. Where would they like their library to be located? The first is the existing site, which is right there off of like North Druid Hills near the new city center. The second option is in the parking lot behind the MARTA station. The third option is at Brookhaven Park off of Peachtree Boulevard. So do you have any thoughts on that? Any opinions you'd like to share? And if you're uncomfortable, don't feel like you have to. I'm just curious.
Well, I have limited knowledge, but I am aware that there is a question about that right now. I would say, based on my observations, this is not a policy statement, but I have observed that the library system, the county library system, has been making plans for developing the first site that you mentioned, and considerable effort has been put into that to the point of getting Army Corps of Engineers approval and now being ready to present a zoning application to the city. Certainly the city can, has the right to change its mind, and I can't speak to where that's going. I would be interested in knowing the results of that. But at the same time, I think it would be wise for all taxpayers to be aware of the resources that have already been devoted to planning in one direction, and changing direction would present an additional cost, I assume. I'm speaking off the top of my head because I don't have deep knowledge, but that's where I perceive that it's at, and that's not a question for me to decide. That's a question for city officials, municipal officials, and the county officials to work out.
And certainly the library board. Thank you very much. Yield back.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Bolton?
It's great to have you here with us, Mr. Cooper. I don't have any questions, so I do appreciate, Madam Chair, allowing me an opportunity just to say, I know your value in the community and some of the other ways that you serve, and as a mom of young children, the library is where I take my kids to go and enjoy the experience of books. So I'm with you. I love the library. I love having access to the librarian. So knowing that you're well-versed in what that experience is for families, and just your familiarity with it is reassuring to me. And I'm really happy to have you here interviewing for the appointment of our library committee.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Bolton, and I appreciate that you're here, even though you're not a member of the committee. You're taking the time to be here, and I respect that.
Absolutely. Thank you, and I yield back.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Patrick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I love everything you've been saying about libraries. Much like Commissioner Bolton, I would take my kids to the Dorville Library. Wednesdays was reading time, story time with a character in one of the books. So I hope we can continue that level of service for all of DeKalb County. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Patrick. Thank you so much, Mr. Cooper, for your time and spending a moment with us, answering our questions, and your willingness to serve on the Library Board of Trustees. We do appreciate you being with us this afternoon.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And next, we're going to skip around just a tad bit. We do have a presentation that's going to be lengthy. We will go to, if you're following along with us, page 2, the bottom of page 2. And that's where we're going to start at WorkSource DeKalb. The item number is 2025-1471, all commission districts. The approval of a one-year lease extension amendment to standard rental agreement dated December 1st, 2012, between DeKalb County Government and Charian Real Estate LLC. The amendment extends the lease through December 31st, 2026, and increases the 2026 rental rate to $515,954.25, and adds a provision for WorkSource to pay an estimated $68,000 for utilities totaling $583,954 for 2026. So do we have any questions related to that? And do you have anything you'd like the Chair, COO, related to that agenda item?
Madam Chair, there's nothing specific to report. This is simply part of extending the lease for WorkSource at 774 Jordan Lane. We're in the process of attempting to secure other locations, but we just want to be safe and ensure that we have a place for the next year.
Thank you so much. Committee, do you have any thoughts, any questions? Any other colleagues? Okay, Commissioner Terry?
Yes, motion to approve item 1471.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much. The next is under Community Development. That's item 2025-1446, all commission districts contract with Frontline Response to provide unhoused assistance services to include the implementation of the unhoused navigator and warming and cooling centers, as well as permanent housing transition services for an amount not to exceed $990,000. Thank you so much again, Mr. CEO. COO.
COO, yes. And actually, Mr. Tommy Phillips will actually lead the presentation. I would like to introduce a substitute item, though. And we
Okay.
have presented in the agenda package and the much more comprehensive service that we are seeking to provide for the unhoused. But what we're looking to do today is bifurcate that item. We'll come back with the additional services for the emergency housing, the transitional housing, and the supportive housing. Today, we would like to focus on warming and cooling services. And Mr. Phillips will be presenting the warming and cooling services component. You have been provided a substitute item, which is $420,000, that provides for the warming and cooling. And we will come back at a later date with an additional item that will deal with the,
All right, I appreciate it, and thank you, Mr. Phillips, for being here. Do we have the sub to be passed out? Give me 1 second. Thank you. And so the only difference in the sub is just bifurcation and the change in the dollar amount. Okay.
Yes. We've eliminated a list of the services for another item, and what we want to do is focus on the warming shelters, recognizing that time is not on our side, and we want to make sure that we advance this prior to the cold weather coming.
I completely agree, and just getting into, November getting cold, and knowing we already have a number of storms ahead of us. You see what Jamaica and the rest of the Caribbean is dealing with, at present time. Definitely want to be mindful, and the challenges of people losing their SNAP benefits, come the end of this week, obviously want to make sure that we're putting provisions in place to care for our citizens. So appreciate that and allowing us to receive this. I don't have any questions. I want to see if Commissioner Long-Spears.
Yes, thank you so much, Madam Chair. So my first question goes to how you came up with the number of 400, and hello, sir.
Hi there, how
Thank
you
for being
doing?
with us.
Good to see you, Commissioner.
How did you come up with the 420,000 number
So we,
out of 990,000?
the number that we have now is based on the locations we changed, a little bit different than we did last year. What we did this year, we have 7 locations. And those locations primarily will be staffed by frontline individuals. So that number includes staff for those facilities, and that would be at the North DeKalb facility. It's going to be also at the Gresham Road location, and we're going to have it at the 2 other sites that we have. You notice in the handout, you see the breakout. Everybody has a handout, right? So
Correct.
You see the handout for the locations in here. PowerPoint's up here. So
We can't see the,
Right, I was
see
saying, if you
everybody's-
like, we can run through the PowerPoint.
you
It
want to
really
do that first,
lays out
Chair
all
Messiah, and I
that.
can hold that question?
If it's going to be, yes, helpful to decipher that, it was we had seen this agenda item. It was just, again, bifurcated, just taking out the warming and cooling centers.
Correct.
And with the time sort of being of essence, dealing with warming and cooling centers in the past, that it would be, as, pretty straightforward, but happy if that needs to take place. Also wanting to be mindful that we have the data center text amendment and a number of other items to be able to go through. So, my preference would really be, since we have the presentation right here, that if you'd like to table this particular item, we move on and you look through it and determine if you have any questions, and then we bring them back to answer that. That would be my preference for the purposes of being able to move forward. Okay. Yes,
So
ma'am.
do you want to bring it back at the end of this meeting, or you're saying we want to defer this item for 2 weeks?
No, we'd bring it back at the during the course of this meeting.
Okay.
Okay. All right, that's fine. I do have questions about how you came up with that number.
So we'll.
And I think it's in here as well.
Okay, right. So we'll come back to this particular item and think of any questions that you might have, but just wanted to address because of the timing component of the warming and cooling centers.
Thank you, Commissioner.
See the presentation.
All right. Thank you so much. With that, for those following along, 2025-1446 we will come back to. We're continuing on page 3. Now with item 2025-1497, all commission districts, approval of contract with Habitat for Humanity DeKalb using HUD Home Investment Partnership Program Community Housing Development Organization funds, and that total amount for those funds is $1,050,000. Thank you so much for joining us, and it seems we have a substitute or presentation? We have a presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I'm Alma Cooper. I'm standing in for Alan Mitchell. I am here to present to you a proposal to use home funding to fund DeKalb Habitat for Humanity. DeKalb, next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. My first time. Okay. The agenda is requesting to approve the allocation of $1,050,000 in federal HUD funds for Habitat for Humanities. The funds will be used for the acquisition and the rehabilitation and resale of homes to low moderate income persons at or below HUD's requirement. What is a CHODO? It's a community housing organization that comes about, that is a nonprofit-based development that meets the specific federal criteria under the home program. They have qualified staff. They are low-income community representative on their board, and they define service areas and demonstrate the capacity to be the owner, developer, or the sponsor of affordable housing. DeKalb Habitat for Humanities has been in operation for 37 years. They have been a part of of DeKalb County since 2008. They focus on creating affordable housing. Their initiative this year is to provide housing in the Southwest DeKalb corridor. Habitat has a proven record of timely and compliant use of HUD funds. They are successfully acquired, rehabilitated, and sold homes to eligible families. They also show a strong partnership with local banks, appraisers, and realtors, ensuring that families are both mortgage ready and support throughout the process. DeKalb Habitat for Humanity showcases. Here is a home that was in deplorable shape, and you have the before pictures and you have the after pictures. Here is a home that, I'm sorry, those two pictures got mixed up. I'm sorry. This is the rehabilitated home. That is what it looked like before. Here's what it looked like afterwards. And they were able to rehab it and to sell it. Additional rehab and resale properties. What we ask for is, it's our recommendation to approve DeKalb Habitat for Humanities. I want to thank you for your time. I am here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cooper. Any committee members have any questions?
If I could just say a few words? Okay, thank you very much, Chair Messiah, and we appreciate you being with us today. Did a great job standing in for Director Alan Mitchell. He's used to being at the podium. I'm excited about this. I think that Habitat for Humanity is a great institution, and I'm so proud that we have the strong leadership that we do for DeKalb's Habitat for Humanity. I believe that the executive director is present today. Would it be?
Yes, Sharon.
Yes, Ms. Steele. Would you be okay if I asked a question of Ms. Steele?
Good.
Okay. So Ms. Steele, if you wouldn't mind making your way up here, but I will ask the question. Oh, there you go. You went to the back one. That made it fast. Okay, awesome. All right, and so again, thank you so much, Ms. Steele, to you, your board, all of your volunteers, your staff, for everything that you do for our community. I just wanted to hear from you how this investment will support your work, from your perspective.
Funding always is going to help us build more homes.
Great response.
Yeah. Most people don't understand that habitats are responsible for raising money in their local areas that they're responsible for serving, and oftentimes that is a challenge. And so when we get the support of our local government to help us serve the constituents of DeKalb, it's definitely a plus, and this funding will really help us with that, along with the focus on dealing with infield properties, blighted properties, and neighborhoods that just need a little sprucing up with a home that's sitting there vacant for years, where people are dumping stuff. That's where Habitat can come in and kind of clean up the neighborhood, do some stabilization, as well as provide an opportunity for someone to become a homeowner in DeKalb County.
All right, thank you so much. Yield
Thank you.
back.
Can I
Commissioner
say
Tier-
one? I've just realized the DeKalb County colors are the same as Habitat's colors.
Oh.
Just a plug.
Fantastic.
Yeah, blue and green are good.
Yes,
And
Commissioner
Ms.
Terry?
Ms. Steele, hang up there for a little bit. Because I did want to ask, it does look, just based on the presentation, that the priority is rehabilitation, not necessarily building new homes. But is it mostly about finding sort of these homes that are kind of like blighted or like destroyed, and I guess we own them as like foreclosed properties or something, I guess, right?
That is correct. In general, home funds do allow for new construction, but DeKalb County Community Development put an overlay on ours because they're concerned about the blight. And so we're working with the DeKalb County Land Bank with properties that have been acquired by them to help us help them and help us and help the homeowners get home. So we will not be doing any new construction with this funding. It's all we have.
Okay. And if you do have a home that's like the one on slide 7 was like, it looked like it had been burnt down or something, when you rebuild it, are you allowed to rebuild it to the same square footage, or do you have to get like a variance to keep the square foot below what the 2,000 minimum is now?
That's going to vary with municipalities a little bit.
Okay.
It really has varied with the properties that we've had. I'm not quite sure that I can answer that question appropriately. I think Rachel probably can do a better job than I could.
Okay.
Answering
Well,
that
Madam
question.
Chair, is it possible just to ask Rachel Bragg, our zoning administrator, to just help us understand how a rehabilitation of a smaller home, because I think this one on slide 7 looks like it's probably like a 1,400 square foot home, can they rebuild it back to 1,400, or do they have to make it 2,000?
So there's a couple different code sections that apply here. The first one is 8116, which is whether it's a major modification or a minor modification of a non-conforming structure. So it depends on the scope of that project. But I can also tell you that in practice, we have never required someone to increase the size of a house during a rehabilitation or a reconstruction project.
Gotcha.
So.
Okay, very good. All right, so the good news is if there was a smaller home, it would just be sort of built back similar size, probably, I imagine, right, Ms. Steele?
Typically, we try to make sure we maintain the character of the neighborhood. So if that is what's happening in the neighborhood, that is certainly what we will build back.
Okay, great. And then the only other request I had, just sort of future forward, is just if it's possible between community development and the administration, just to share sort of the priority areas. If you already kind of have a list of the lots you're targeting as sort of the first ones, and just break it out by commission district, so we just have a good sense of the distribution of where some of the rehabbed properties would be.
She did provide us with a list of proposed, understanding that properties come and go. So we asked them to give us more than what they're asking for funding. And should all of those not be available, then she can go. I did get your email, and I am prepared for DeKalb Habitat for Humanity. They have asked for the Southwest Corridor. And so far, the properties that they have asked for are in District 3 and 5. Okay. So I can tell you, based on what we have that they have in their application, exactly where they are. Okay. Even though it's open, the choice is up to them where they want to develop or where they see affordable housing at.
Okay, very good. Yeah, and if you don't mind, just add the super districts into that District 3, 5, since District 6 and 7 overlap with 3 and 5, just so we have context.
I will do that.
Thank you. Yield back.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Bolton?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a few questions on, it's page 2, but it's slide 4, where you indicate that the CHOTA partnership with DeKalb has been through 2008. And has that included this or, different iterations of a home funds allocation, or is this the first time we're doing home funds?
No, they have been a CHOTA with DeKalb County itself since 2008. They had a break due to COVID, and they came back. They are required to recertify. She went through the recertification process and was successful, and as a result, we said, okay, you may submit an application. After the application period, we brought it here for funding consideration.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, I wasn't clear in my question.
Okay.
So I understand that the relationship or the partnership has been through 2008. I was just trying to clarify, has that partnership always been where we give them an allocation of home funds to do the acquisition, rehabilitation, and resale, or have there been other sort of partners or relationships within that partnership?
No, the ones that they have gotten from us have always been just home funding.
Home funds,
Yes.
okay. So with that, how many homes do you project will be either rehabilitated? Well, I'll just say rehabilitated, because all of that kind of goes into one. But how many homes do you guys anticipate being able to rehabilitate?
Well, all of that is conditioned upon the market. It's conditioned upon, for example, right now, they have submitted roughly about 6 homes to us, with starting out the acquisition price being somewhere around $25,000, $30,000 acquisition price. And then, of course, we don't have the rehab costs because these are just proposed. We don't know that she's going to get them, so we don't require the push for the rehab part of it until they know exactly what they're going to get.
Okay. No, that's good. That just gives us an idea of what the capacity might be. We understand that it depends on the market. Actually, that answers my last question as well. I yield back.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Bolton. Commissioner Patrick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a comment and a statement. Through All Saints Catholic Church, pre-pandemic, I was always able to help out with Habitat for Humanity within different parts of, I guess, the metro area, so it's always been a pleasure to help out with you guys. I believe we allocated about $30,000 for home repair components with Habitat for Humanity. So great organization, great purpose, and thank you for what you guys do in the county. Thank you.
And if I could just add, just one other caveat that we, in community development, we have a strong approach to, and that is the fact that before we will allow new construction, there has to be a great need for it, that there is no more available rehabs in the area that's affordable, because we know that it is easier to rehab than to go for the new construction because of all of the costs. So we are looking to try to do the best for the county that we can.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cooper. And I have a couple of questions for you, Ms. Steele, because we were just advised that essentially the properties presently they were asked for, and they're in D3 and D5. What particularly made you ask for those properties?
That was in conjunction with working with the land bank. They knew what type of properties that we were looking for, properties that they deemed that need to be torn down, that actually could be rehabilitated. And so we worked in tandem to identify some properties that the land bank had, and that's how we came to that number.
Okay, and so they're going to be torn down?
No.
Okay, not torn.
No.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah,
we
some
were
of the
clear.
properties that the land bank own, just you cannot rehabilitate. They do need to be torn down. These are ones that we've identified in conjunction that there is a possibility that we can definitely rehabilitate them.
I appreciate that. And how do you determine what developers Habitat for Humanity works with in terms of doing the rehabilitation work?
We are the developer.
Okay, and so is it that you hire out construction or sub out, or do you just do all the development and everything yourself, or do you have other folks that
It's a combination.
Okay.
We are able to stretch our dollars because we do use a combination. Of course, things that have to be licensed, such as roofing, electrical, those types of things we do sub out. Other areas where framing and stuff, we use a lot of our corporate partners and volunteers throughout the community, as well as, of course, the homeowners who have to put in some sweat equity hours for the houses that they're going to own. But it's a combination.
All right, and do you guys co-work with developers as well, or is that just related to the subs vendors?
No, we're actually in conversation with some developers now, actually talking about, but that's more so on our new construction side than necessarily on the rehab side, to help us get some homes up faster.
Okay, and how are you going to determine which developers that you're going to use for the new developments?
We put out an RFP. We'll talk to developers and see who, and we're looking at some other habitats who are doing the same and getting some referrals and working through it that way.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Does anyone else have any other questions? Thank you so much, Ms. Cooper. Thank you so much, Ms. Steele. With that, with no other questions, we will move forward on this item again, 2025-1497.
Motion to approve.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
The next item is 1502. This is Human Services, all commission districts, acceptance of a grant in the amount of $877,856 from the Georgia Department of Public Health for the DeKalb Maternal, Infant, and Early Childhood Home Visiting Program at no cost to the county. Great afternoon, Mr. Scott, or Director Scott.
Good afternoon, Madam PECS Chair and members of the PECS Committee. You may recall in May, the end of May, I provided a brief overview of the MeChef program and the grant opportunity that I'm here to discuss. And so the 14th year of funding was approved on May 29th by the BOC, which ended on September 30th. This request is for the 2026 funding, which has actually increased to $877,856 that will go through September 30th, 2026. The MISHA program, which is now, again, going into our 15th year, we provide early childhood home visiting services to children 0 to 5 years old. And the families are referred through different community partners, clinics, hospitals, early Head Start programs, and social services agencies, including some self-referrals, and we also get referrals at our special events. This program is extremely essential because it prevents child abuse and promotes healthy child development and prepares young children for school and their success. As I said, this is the 15th year, and we have a long-standing relationship with the Department of Public Health for this program. As you may recall in the last presentation, slide please, there are 2 partners that are selected by the Georgia Department of Public Health. We do not select the site visits for those, for the parents teachers model that's delivered at these locations. And those 2 organizations are New American Pathways and Scottsdale Early Learning Clinic. And so in the metro area, DeKalb is the only county that offers the combined First Steps and Home Visiting program. This positions us to be the leader in the regional area for this type of service in terms of maternal and child health. It's important to note that from 2022 to 2025, our funding has increased by the total of $274,000, which indicates strong performance and consistent compliance and strong service delivery. In the model, during this time period, a total of 3,668 home visits were delivered between Scottsdale Early Learning and New American Pathways. And through our First Steps program, it's important to note that any family who is pregnant or has a child between 0 and 5 that are residing in DeKalb County, we link them to families with support services and their communities. They also receive services to our directory, age-appropriate books, a tote bag, and brochures and other information, and 1,000 families are served this way annually. Within the maternal, infant, child home visiting program, some of the successes, particularly in DeKalb, which is where we provide all of our services, 82% of the children were read to, which helps promote early literacy at home. In terms of supporting maternal wellness, 74% of mothers receive postpartum care within 8 weeks of being in the program. And in terms of looking at developmental delays, 77% of the children between the ages of 9 and 30 months receive developmental screenings, which helps assess the child's milestones and the family to receive early intervention services when needed. And 72% of children receive timely well clinic visits, which is very important for their early success in school with immunizations, health checkups, and their growth plan, which goes into the preventive pediatric care plan for each family that's in that program. And so we're seeking your approval for funding, to receive funding at no cost to the county, no match for 2026, 2025, 2026.
Thank you so much, Director Scott. Do any committee members have any questions? Commissioner Long-Spears?
Thank you again so much for being with us today, for your detailed presentation. So while I know this happens all the time with contracts, October 1st came and went, so it's no problem that we're just voting on this today? Because obviously this would be, if we move with this suggestion, would be a recommendation for approval out of committee. It still has to be voted on in the business meeting. No problem then?
No problem.
Being after October?
We'll be okay.
All right. My second question is, does this, for the target footprint for this program, does that include all of DeKalb County or just the unincorporated pieces of DeKalb County?
All DeKalb County.
Including the municipalities?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Damon. I yield back.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Bolton? Commissioner Patrick? Thank you so much. With no further questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve 1502.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much. For the next agenda item, those following along, we're in the middle of page 3. That's agenda item ending in 1511, all commission districts awarding the 2025 Human Services Grant to local nonprofits at a cost of $559,609 to the county. Thank you so much again, Director Scott, and it looks like we're going to have some assistance here.
Thank you, Madam PECS Chair, members of the PECS Committee. I'll have Deborah Furtado up here with me. This is the 21st year of the Human Services Grants Program. And slide, please. So the process starts annually in May when we have our first public meeting where we invite any interested parties in the public to apply for a Human Services Grant. 354 were registered in May. The process continues through applications being received in July and up until October, when the Human Services Selection Committee recommends organizations for an award, and at that time it goes to Mr. COO's office with a memo, and then a recommendation and an agenda item for approval by the BOC and the PECS committee typically. Phase 1 is the minimum threshold on how you become a Human Services grantee in the application process. So a completed application must be submitted online by the date and time. They have to have 2 years of a proven track record of providing services in DeKalb County. They have to have experience in the service areas in DeKalb County. They have to be a verified 501c tax exempt status, and they have to have a current independent annual audit conducted by a licensed certified public accountant and a governing body that meets at least quarterly. Those are the minimum thresholds for an organization in order to apply for a Human Services grant. Of those that attended the public hearing, 134 submitted applications online. It's important to note that 44% of those applications were not fully completed by those that were interested in applying. And slide, please. And so in phase 2, which is the next step, which is the coordinating committee that consists of other subject matter experts that are unbiased, and they are reviewers of the merits of the application received by the Human Services Grants Program. And this is an annual thing, and it's built into the process. And so those 68 applications that were received are now go into phase 2, and then we review them for the priority areas in which they are submitting a grant application. And before you see the 9 service areas, which are in advocacy, crisis intervention, disability, elderly services, family human services, food insecurity, homelessness, unhoused, public health, and youth. In the phase 2, before you see the scoring breakout of how applications are scored, and there's a logic model that also looks at outcomes. And
Yes.
you want to say here, Deborah, on that?
No, just the process is a very thorough process. I'm actually one of the grant evaluators, so I know it's very, very thorough.
Okay. And so, the evaluation results of the applications of the 68 that are here, 85% met threshold and were recommended, meaning that they scored above 80 and they were recommended for approval. Of those, 10 did not make it the 80, so they were eliminated out of being recommended for award. And so we had 58 that were recommended going forward in the proposed categories of which they applied for and said they could deliver services. So that's in advocacy, crisis intervention, disability, elderly, family human services, food insecurity, homelessness, and public health, and then youth. And you see those numbers. And so before you today, what you will ultimately hear from me is requesting funding and awards for 58 organizations, 50 in human services, and then there's 8 within domestic violence victim assistance, and 1 for the DeKalb County Victim Assistance Fund, and that is Women's Resource Centers, Women Moving On. The total amount of money is $759,609. $559,609 of that is in our budget for human services grants. $150,000, which was approved for the Women's Resource Center, Women Moving On, and $50,000 for victim assistance grants that will go to other organizations that scored above 80. The calculations, in case you want to know how funds calculated and how the awards are calculated, you will see that there's a base grant amount of $10,000, and based on how the applications, how they are scored, there's a percentage that is then added to that base grant amount, and then that then becomes the funding total for those organizations that are recommended for award.
Thank you so much. It sounds like we've got information from agenda item 1511 and 1512 sort of going on there.
Yes.
I appreciate it. Just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of that, and also for the benefit of the community.
Okay. I did want to point out two other things just quickly.
Yes.
Social impact and funding challenges, you have this in front of you. If you go from the right to the left, you will see some of the social impacts and extension of the Human Services Department through our grantees in their award, in their awards, and how many families were served in each category. And then you see the average funding and award leading to where we are now with the recommendations to the left. All of those organizations that are touching upon social determinants of health, and then the categorical areas where we're recommending funding for the organizations that were selected. Since 2016 to current, you will see that the Human Services funding for this particular grant has been relatively flat and then has gone down over the past 2 years, which has led to some challenges in the award because there's more demand and there's $5,000 less per organization. And so where we are today is that we have organizations that are meeting threshold, but the average award has decreased because the funding pot has changed for the total amount of money that's available to those organizations that have met threshold. So I'm here today seeking approval to award the grantees for 2025-2026, and seeking approval from the board for authorization for Madam CEO and administration to execute all documents required to deliver the grants to those that were selected for award for this next cycle.
Thank you so much, Director Scott. Commissioner Terry?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you go to slide 10?
Yeah.
Which has the base grant award calculation. So basically, everyone that makes it through the various sort of rounds of review will get $10,000, but then you go through a very complex scoring percentage to really just get a couple $100 more per percentage. So can you explain why you go through so much trouble and so much calculations to literally give someone like $1,000 more dollars or $1,200 more dollars?
It's really based on the total amount of money and those that score above threshold, and it really supports the fairness. So somebody that scores a 91 will not be funded at the same as somebody that scores 83.
Yeah.
The one at 91 will obviously get a little bit more based on the pot of money that we have available. If the pot of money increases, then the average award per organization will increase.
Well, but maybe another way to look at it is you could have different levels of base grant amounts. And I think when you say fairness, I think what you're really saying is everyone gets treated equally. But if you wanted to look at it from a lens of equity, you might actually ask the question of what is the annual budget of the 58 organizations that are approved. I mean, in years past, we gave $10,000 to Goodwill of North Georgia. I mean, that's a multi-million-dollar organization. Do they really need $10,000 from us, or does the neighborhood soup kitchen need $25,000 because their budget is $50,000? So, and you've heard me say this for 5 years. And every year I say, can you please look at doing the formula different? And you never change it. And I guess that's because I'm not in charge. It's fine. But I at some point, I have to just say, stand on principle, because every award we're giving is basically $11,000. And they're all great organizations, and I'm sure they do great work. I know like almost half of them. But I'm really, really interested in impact. And year in and year out, that those priorities could change. You know, right now we're talking a lot about food assistance because that's what's going on right now. We've talked a lot about violence prevention. So it seems like every time you do a grant cycle, you say, what are the priorities that commissioners, CEO, the county wants to focus on, and then to begin to actually put buckets in place that are on impact. If you give everyone $11,000, it almost seems like you're making everyone jump through a bunch of hoops for a small amount of money, which I'm sure they appreciate. And I've worked for nonprofits, you know, you got to hire a grant writer. Sometimes the executive is doing it. They're doing it on the margins. They're doing it on, you know, in spare time they have. And you're doing all this work for some money. But what if there was a little bit scaling of the grant approach, and instead of saying base 10,000, you say we have 25% that are 10,000 and 50% are 50,000, but maybe a handful that are the priority areas of the county this year are going for 100,000, because then you can really make an impact. But I mean, share the philosophy, if you don't mind, behind the just everyone gets $11,000 and then it is what it is.
Yeah, Commissioner, I can, and thank you for that question. It's always a good question. I think there's two things, really. One is, since I've been with the county, I started in 2018. I've seen the dollars decrease every single year for the grant funding. Really, the organizations that concern me the most are those that provide domestic violence services. So that the dollars have gone down. This year, I did tell Damon I put more money, asked for it in the budget, because what we're seeing is the demand is great. I will say your other question, and it's really about collective impact, and that is like using the goodwill, for example. The organizations we're looking for, and part of the evaluation is that $10,000 that they receive, let's say, for example, really is used to provide even more services. So we also look at, you know, we say this isn't all of your funding that you're getting from DeKalb County. They can actually serve more people. And the smaller organizations are not penalized as well. You are correct. People go after this funding because there is a need out there. So we one year we had almost 300 nonprofits that asked, you know, for funding. So I think there's a solution is more money. Another solution would be to have 1 and 2 grant timelines. I mentioned to Damon, I did some analysis where Mecklenburg County in North Carolina does a 1-year grant program and a 2-year grant program, so they can fund, you know, for longer. That would require more money. But it is something that the evaluation process does allow us to give a little bit more to organizations. It's still not a lot. And some, quite frankly, I've most noticed it lately, even like our violence prevention nonprofits, they don't want to go through the process because in some cases it may be too difficult for them. The other part is the audit. The audit is a county requirement, and I believe it's important because we are stewards of the county dollars, but also we're trying to convince folks to partner with larger organizations to do other work as well, and partnerships can really work. So I think some are looking at that.
Okay. Just to clarify the funding issue, because I do remember in previous years when it was $617,000, the average grant award was $14,000.
Yeah.
So I hear you, but if you don't change the methodology, what you are arguing for in that statement for more money is you want every organization to get $3,000 more dollars. And I mean, I guess that could make some impact, but it's $3,000. So maybe you're just keeping up with inflation. But maybe like, and maybe this is I'm just going to throw out a compromise here for my committee members to consider. I have no problem, because at the end of the day, the commission has to approve the budget. I have no problem, just because y'all did all this work, moving forward with what was awarded for all the organizations, and to request in our motion to increase the grant from $559,000 to $617,000. Okay. So basically get you back up to the previous 10 years of funding. Maybe you'll spread it out and do $14,000 per organization, but I would like to request that you do a comprehensive review of this grant program and come back with some different methodologies for the next cycle. So I'm looking for something different, not the same thing every year. And maybe the 2-year cycle is good. Maybe there's different levels. So I'll just throw that out there. I'll yield back and let my colleagues weigh in on that.
And so, Commissioner, I hear you. I'm not opposed to the, to increasing we're at 1511, and then we have 1512, so the total will actually be over 700,000. But in terms of if you're talking about the increase of the 559,609, which is item 1511 to 617,000, I'm not opposed to doing that and looking at other mechanisms and methodologies to distribute the funds. What I don't want to do, though, is put a unfunded mandate and ask that another methodology be derived without trying to determine what would be necessary for them to have another methodology. So if you have some ideas as to what that would look like, or maybe a cost around that, then I'm happy to support that. But I don't want to just put a mandate, that they look at other methodologies without having a way to fund it. Okay. All right. So let me grab committee members first. Commissioner Long-Spears, and then Commissioner Robert Patrick.
Thank you very much, Chair Messiah, and good idea. I certainly think additional funding would be helpful, right? So I wondered, Damon, if you have any supporting documents for any other funding scenarios that you guys played around with. So if you had $1 million, what could you do? If you had 1.25 million, what would that look like?
Yes, Commissioner, we actually did an analysis from when at one point in time in the county's history it was $1 million, and so we can provide that longer view look and analysis that we've done when we were working on today's presentation.
Okay, very good. So if we were to do, say, $1 million for 50 organizations, $20,000 each?
Yes.
Yes.
That's what it was. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, that's it.
That was the norm for a period of time.
Okay, all right. Well, I am certainly in support of increasing the amount of funding that you receive. I think this is an important program. So thank you all so much from Damon and your team for your hard work, and I yield back.
Commissioner Patrick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Following up with Commissioner Terry's notion of a different methodology, could you look around the country and see what other similar jurisdictions, what methodology they already have, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel? And then a recommendation to the committee would be if you guys could bring that back to the committee and then have a discussion on the different methodologies and the merit of existing versus something different. I sort of have a feeling that the goal is to make sure that everybody has something to help in different components in this field, as opposed to putting everything on one and hoping that it gets out into the community as best as possible. But that's just my opinion. I'll yield back to my colleagues who are ignoring me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Patrick. Commissioner Bolton?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I just had a few questions as well. My first question is the goal to fund every organization that qualifies? Or of the qualified organizations, do you rate them and then select the top 50?
Yeah. So it's not to fund every organization, but it's to fund those that score 80 or above, Commissioner. So they have to score 80 or above. And I have, since I've evaluated.
I'm sorry, that's what I meant. If they all meet the minimum, they all get funded.
If you score 79, you're not funded, unfortunately. Yeah.
Okay. And the reason that I'm asking that is because slide 8, we see that there are 19 organizations that qualify for youth, and I would imagine a lot of their services overlap. They probably even serve some of the same communities, which means they're serving some of the same families. And it seems that may not necessarily be ideal for what we're trying to accomplish if we have different organizations doing the same thing, which is why the partnerships become even more important. So I would imagine of the 19, there might be a top 10 that have a greater impact, and we may want to encourage the other 9 to partner with the top 10, and then that would leave some wiggle room for us to redistribute the funding so that those organizations can help more families.
That's a great point. Yeah, and we do ask that question. And in the evaluation, collaboration is a main question. We actually evaluate and assign points to how many other organizations you collaborate with. That is a good question. And we're going to offer more training sessions for nonprofits on collaboration and partnering, because you're right. But also looking at that slide, you'll see that that is really the need, though, too. It also shows you that I can tell you now, working more on violence prevention, that working with youth is really a great need for us right now. So that is, but your point is well taken. I think that's a big push to do that, and I think we need to do that even more. And I'll give you an example, if I may, if you just indulge me for a minute. The organization Flowing with Blessings, for example, they provide showers and laundry services at my church, at Decatur First United Methodist Church. Be there on November 8th. They did not qualify. I probably shouldn't say that, but they did. But they did not decide to go after it, I should say. And then they said they could partner with the church, and that is a partnership. The church would be happy to do that with them. So those are ways that you can partner, but they just could not complete the application process, for them.
And something that we also do is the smaller nonprofits. We provide a lot of education and support, and in some cases refer them to other types of training so that they can compete with the other larger nonprofits as they go for not only just our grant, but other grants, right? Because information is power, and any smaller nonprofit, it's better to be able to go after another grant after you were able to secure one grant, right? To show a history. So we help them along the way, because we know they're just starting out. So they may have some challenges in that environment, and we do provide those services to them as well.
Okay, wonderful. And so if we were to do a pie chart showing need, because you indicated with for youth, that number is higher because obviously the need is higher. So if we were to compare these numbers to maybe some sort of chart or pie graph showing need, would these numbers be consistent with that? For example, advocacy, there's less of a need, which is why 3 grants were given in the area of advocacy versus 19 in youth.
But they select a category based on their priority area and what they're going to apply for. So that's how we categorize them and where they go into the funding.
And I could also say that, food insecurity is probably one of the number one issues facing us. There weren't that many nonprofits. The Atlanta Community Food Bank is one of the nonprofits. They serve a lot of people, and they help the county a lot. But there were not, and I did not evaluate those types of grants. Mine was on the domestic violence or victim assistance. But there aren't as many that provide that service. And you think about the food bank, large nonprofit, to Commissioner Terry's point, but they serve a lot, and they serve a lot of the pantries. So that's something else that they do. But I think we could look at that, and you'll get a list, and you'll see which nonprofits are actually awarded to.
Wonderful. And I appreciate that response, because it kind of goes back to my initial question of just because they qualify and the funds are available, if the need is really greater for food insecurity, and I know you said there weren't a lot of nonprofits that applied in that area, but there were for youth, just because they applied and they qualified, does that necessarily mean they should have automatically gotten it, or could we have sought to put more energy into reaching out to organizations that serve in the capacities that we need it most?
Yeah, I actually do that, and they don't always go for it.
Okay.
And they say, Deborah, it's just a little bit too hard for us.
I gotcha.
And so that's the problem too.
Okay, and then my last question, because this is not my committee meeting, but I have a lot of need in South DeKalb. So I just want to understand on slide 10, the base for all of them, whether it's general fund, victim assistance, is that right? DeKalb County Victim Assistance, Human Services Victim Assistance, the base is $10,000 for all of them. But for general fund, they can get an additional up to almost $1,300, whereas for the Human Services Victim Assistance, they can get an additional almost $6,000.
Yes, this,
That's for the VA.
this is based on, yes, you're actually right. This is from a different pot of money from the
Okay.
Victim Assistance Board. And then there's the fund for the Women's Resource Center. So it's
Different.
Different.
Okay, all righty, I got you, thank you. And I would love for us to consider support for veterans, even if it's one organization and I have a recommendation. I yield back.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Bolton. All right, and so we're going to take these two agenda items, even though they've been discussed in tandem individually, and vote on them individually. And so the first will be 1511. And my suggestion is, just in consideration of the importance and need for human services grant and how many nonprofits, local nonprofits that we do support throughout the county, knowing that the need is going to be greater, increasing, and the ask of Commissioner Terry and others to try to think of other methodologies is that we increase that ask of $559,609 to $650,000 for 1511. So that's going to be my ask. With that, I am open to a motion.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I do agree with that proposal, and so what I'd like to do now is motion to approve item 1511, but I would like to, in that motion, request that the award amount for the Human Services 2025 grant be increased to $650,000, and for the budget director and the administration to provide the subsequent, budgetary changes in terms of how they account for the funding, and presumably that additional amount will allow for a greater distribution of the average award to the selected nonprofits. And if my colleagues are open to it, just because our colleague asked about veterans assistance, that we request that a commiserate amount on average be set aside for a veteran service organization that can be identified, on your own. But basically, in essence, everyone's going to be getting a little bit more, and then we just have a little additional line item for a veterans, assistance program. So that is the motion.
All right.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There we go. So we have the next agenda item is 1512. Hold on, give me 1 second. We're going to vote on that one really quickly here. So that's 1512, all commission districts awarding the Victim Assistance Grant for 2025, state certified victim assistance nonprofit agencies transfer funds from the Victim Assistance Fund 206 to the Human Services Grant Fund Cost Center 67510 at a cost of $200,000 to the county.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you so much. And I want to go back to item number 2025-1446. My apologies. I appreciate that Commissioner Terry is going to allow me some minutes from FAB. I did not realize we would have as many presentations as we've had. And with Mr. Phillips and COO Williams, I moved them forward, not knowing we were going to have all these other subsequent presentations. So I want to give them an opportunity to move through as they see fit so that we can go ahead and understand the dynamics of this agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And depending on how much time we have, I'd just like to touch on some of the key points. So what we have done, just to reiterate, is bifurcated the original item that had a much more comprehensive unhoused assistance strategy. And we are simply dealing today with the warming and cooling center contract with Frontline Response. It will be our intention to come back with the rest of it at a later date. But we just felt this is very time sensitive, so we wanted to bring this forward. So that's why you see the reduction from $990,000 to $420,000. It's because significant components of the original agenda item are being postponed for a later discussion so that we can focus on the warming center. The warming center contract essentially is providing for an estimated 61 days of housing accommodation during cold weather, but cold or warm or hot weather, but inclement weather, with up to 400 clients per night. This will also provide, here's some key provisions that we haven't had in the past. One is staffing. This contract will provide for staffing from Frontline into not only the facility at Frontline Response, but into county facilities. So they will come in and they will manage the sheltering operations in our facilities. Additionally, preparing and delivering hot meals to each of the warming centers. That's been a challenge historically that we had not been able to provide, but we have managed in this contract to provide for delivery of hot meals to each of the locations. And then transportation to and from all of the warming center locations. So those are key elements that we have two, and then back to the original location where they were picked up. Yes. Sorry, Commissioner Terry and I were just having a conversation. That's what I was doing there.
No, that's quite all right.
Yeah.
And I'm going
guys
to
are
get on
probably wondering, who's he
Commissioner
talking to?
Terry, because just briefly, I do want us to be able to get to our appointments and then
Yes.
the text data center. So
Yes.
are there any questions? And I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut it short. Are there any questions that?
Madam Chair, that was my only thing I wanted to get answered on this particular aspect of the contract. So in the past, when I've visited the, for instance, the Chamblee Warming Center, some individuals, and I witnessed this one night, said, I don't want to go to Frontline because I work in the morning, and so I need to actually be nearby so I can get to work. So when we do the pickup at Chamblee, for instance, and we take them to Frontline for the hot meal, the shower, facilities, the expectation in this contract is that there will be a bus leaving the next morning back to where they were picked up at, if that's what they choose.
Yes, that's correct. But the unique thing, or the beauty of what we're doing now, is we will be providing, if we're opening the North Service Center as well as Frontline, if we need them both, we will be providing hot meals. So in the past, a lot of the desire was to go get a hot meal, but we're going to be providing hot meals at each of the facilities.
Wow.
Oh, gotcha.
Wow.
Okay, great.
That's fantastic.
Thank you. I don't have to buy them pizza anymore.
Exactly.
Like I did last
Commissioner
time.
Terry has bought pizza in the past.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Longspears?
Thank you so much. I do have some questions. So, first of all, I'm trying to understand how you came up, you already have a hint on this, the $420,000. And the original item for FL, what does that stand for? It says FL Warming Cooling Centers Operations.
Frontline.
Frontline, okay,
Yeah.
290,000, and then this request is for 420,000. And even when I take the next item, 60,000 and 55,000, the 60,000 is for transportation, shower, meals that you were just speaking about. You wanted hot meals, which is wonderful. And you add in even the permanent housing transitions service there. That still doesn't equal 420,000. What you provided to us was a 2-column, 4-row budget where you wrote warming and cooling center implementation 420,000. You provided a few assumptions, an amount not to exceed 420,000. Then you wrote about warming centers implementation of, you said 7 locations, but one of those, it looks like Toby Grant is a backup location. So I guess I'm just trying to understand how you came up with a number of 420,000. And I definitely would like to see a breakdown of the budget before the business meeting on Tuesday.
We'll be happy to provide that. We have each of the categories, the operations and staff, food, transportation, case management, security, and so forth. We can get you that.
Okay, so, but can you respond to the question now?
So on the locations, we modified the locations. So what we tried to do was make sure consolidated on what we have now reduces the amount of DeKalb County staff. And we start getting into a more consolidated frontline staff, heavy frontline staff, light on DeKalb County staff. So we redid this. So when we first started this, we were looking at it from a different way. Now what we're doing is we're looking at trying to make sure frontline staffs all the locations, all the people there, frontline staff, the volunteers, frontline provides food at all the locations, which we didn't do last year. What we're doing now is changing what we did in 2024. So we didn't do any of this in 2024 in terms of having Frontline manage it, Frontline provide all the food, Frontline provide all the cots. So what you don't see in here, we went back and modified it so that we knew how many cots we had. They're going to manage that now, not DEMA. DEMA did it last year. So we made some modifications to this that you didn't see in the original.
Okay. All right. So I appreciate that response. Before the next meeting, I still would like to see a line item budget for the $420,000, because again, it doesn't sync with what you have in writing in front of us.
Correct. Security's not in there also, Commissioner.
Okay. You're actually going to get to kind of the, I wouldn't say the meat, but one of the meats, maybe the chicken of this question is, I think it's important to hear from Damon Scott, because my understanding is that Human Services has historically staffed and provided security for our warming centers. So the North DeKalb Warming Center, I have visited a few times now. I have met the security gentleman who is super duper nice, and talked to several of the folks up there. And so I know that Human Services has been responsible again for staffing security and the or assisting with the transportation, assisting Frontline with the transportation piece. I've also been told that with the North DeKalb Center, that there can be no evidence in the mornings when they open up to serve the public that there is a warming center there or cooling center. Again, I was just told this verbally. I've not seen it in writing. That has to be perfectly 100% clean before the doors open. And so I know that Human Services has worked very diligently to ensure that's the case, but I just feel like I need some assurance that if Frontline were to take over staffing the warming centers, would they be able to comply with that request as well? And how is Human Services still, because they're still responsible for the centers.
Correct.
So will they also have to staff a person there because it's their responsibility, or would he fully staffed by Frontline? For me, there's just too many questions right now.
Sure, I'm going to envision that Human Services will still have staff there and will be responsible for ensuring that everything is clean. Even whether or not it's Frontline contracted to do it, to your point, it is the county's building. It is Human Services' responsibility to ensure. So, yeah, some things like that are not going to change, whether it's Toby Grant or, whichever facility. Our staff ultimately will have the final sign-off that it looks appropriate to open it up for regular service.
So I know you're a member of the Community Development Department, but we've all acknowledged that Human Services is a major stakeholder in this. So has Human Services been brought to the table? Have you discussed this with them so they know that they're still going to have some staff there? I guess it's undetermined right now how much staff. In addition to Frontline staff, I mean, is there really going to be any savings to Human Services?
Yes, there will.
Okay.
So, and then, so my suggestion is some of the questions that she's asked, please, provide those in writing as soon as possible so she can have the benefit of that information and have any questions she needs answered. Just understanding that we know the importance of having warming and cooling centers. And at this point, in the season, we don't know when we're going to have either. We don't know whether or not it's going to be roasting outside or whether or not we're going to be freezing. So just the need and the importance of having that for our constituents. Commissioner Patrick had a question briefly as well.
I think my colleagues have generally asked the question, but to fine-tune my point, just the updated breakdown of costs for that 420 would be appreciated. Some of the Excel files are a little squished up, so if you can just put out a full page of paper that gives the full description of the services. Showers is one of those things I know that can be used as a way to build trust with folks. You get a warm shower, you get a warm meal, get some space for yourself, and hopefully that gets them to the point of a clearer mind. So
absolutely. And hopefully, Commissioner, everyone sees where we've come from. If you look back, and Commissioner Terry will recall the past, say, 5 years, we have significantly evolved every year.
Well,
so we're proud of what we're presenting today.
To your point, I think that has been a concern over the last 5 years of paying attention to what's happening not just on the north side, but in the places when you're driving down the street, sort of once you start paying attention to homeless folks, you do start seeing them everywhere, and you get concerned about their safety.
Sure.
And the safety of everyone around them. So I guess a pat on the back, an attaboy for the Board of Commissioners as well as CEO's office for recognizing this, and I think this is a good vehicle that gets us in that. It's not perfect, but it's the next step towards coming up with a more comprehensive approach to the homelessness issue at large that we have to deal with, but also ultimately getting towards that next step of how do we get them back into stable housing, get them reintegrated into society, self-sufficiency. So thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Patrick. All right.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Longspears has a very brief follow-up.
Yes, thank you so much. And Commissioner Terry has given Commissioner Messiah until 4 o'clock. So don't fret, folks. We're doing our best today. Okay, so this summer there was a warming center analysis released to the governing authority. I'm not certain who else was copied on that analysis.
Carrie did?
Have you seen it, sir?
No.
Okay, all right.
Doesn't ring a bell. That doesn't mean I haven't seen it. And was this done by, do you know?
Human Services completed this analysis. I received it on July 21st of this year, so this summer. And I will skip down to the conclusion. She has asked me to be speedy, so I will do that. But one thing that really jumps out at me in the conclusions that are offered by Human Services is bullet point number 3, the current network of 6 warming centers is geographically insufficient to serve the distribution of homeless populations across the county. So if you guys would, in the interest of time, please review the report that was done in July by Human Services, who reports to you, and come back and provide. I will be asking questions about this report.
Sure.
Because it very much contradicts what you all in Frontline are proposing in this bifurcated agenda item.
No, then I would definitely love to see it if it contradicts.
Yeah, I will see if you were, I'll find it and I'll forward it on to,
Oh, yeah.
I'll get it to everybody.
Thank you.
It was released on July 21st. All right, again, I will expect the budget and have more questions on Tuesday. Yield
Thank
back.
you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Longspears.
Okay.
All right, and so as it relates to this item that is ending in 1446, do we have a motion?
Yes, Madam Chair, motion to approve the substitute for item 1446 in the amount of $420,000, and then with the expectation that there'll be sort of more specific line item budgets, which I imagine will actually be in the contract, and that's not actually in the agenda item.
Right. But
So I
we
think,
can spell it out. And I'm just thinking, because we bifurcated it last night, maybe we didn't list out
Okay.
everything.
okay, and then hopefully we can actually see the contract before we vote on it as well.
The scope of work, absolutely.
Okay, well, it says we're approving a contract, so I think we should know what the contract says. And then, Madam Chair, I guess we'll just have additional conversations about the other portion.
Human Services analysis.
Yeah, and then, sorry to belabor this motion. Presumably, if there is a need for the warming center before the next 2 weeks, you're prepared to activate it. This is not going to hold anything up in an emergency.
Right.
Okay, so the expectation is that
whether we're able to implement it like this, we're not going to leave people in the cold.
Right.
Okay, so in essence, this is moving through the process, but if a really cold night happens in 2 weeks, this plan will be activated.
It'll be
And
fine.
if we need to,
Right. We are not
ratify or
going to leave
whatever,
people in
we'll
the
do
cold.
it.
You know, and we used fire stations years ago. I mean, so we're not going to leave people in the cold.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Second,
Thank you so much.
with the additional information requested prior to Tuesday's meeting, and you already stated publicly that people would be taken care of.
Absolutely.
No matter what. Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you so much. Those following along, we're going to just go briefly back to the appointments, and then we will have a discussion in around the data center text amendment. So Section 2, appointments, page 1, the agenda item ending in 0992, and that is for the reappointment of Mr. Dennis McConnell to the Historic Preservation Commission. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The next agenda item, ending in 1199, all commission districts, to appoint Mr. Mike Cooper to post 6 of the DeKalb County Public Library Board of Trustees. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much. So now we will go on to the third section, those following along, page 1, under discussion, and it is the data center text amendment. Thank you so much.
Jen.
We're getting,
I have some more printed ones if you need it. Oh.
thank you. We're getting the updates presently.
Yes.
And just want to start by first saying thank you to Planning and all of the work that they have put in for these numerous updates, all of the communication with the administration and all of the commissioners in getting this done. Just from what I've read and based on other discussions, it being some of the most comprehensive text amendments that there are in any of the counties and further than that. So that's just amazing and a testament to everything that you guys have put through to get this done. So with that, please do take it away.
Great. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My name is Tricia Prevost. I'm the senior planner with the Long Range Planning Team. I'm joined here by Eva Chavot, planner on our team as well. And we'll be presenting some of the updates that we've made to the ordinance prior to going to Planning Commission and Board of Commissioners in November. So as stated, our goal for this ordinance is to establish land use regulations for a new use, being data centers. The moratorium was extended recently to December 16th, so thank you again to the commissioners for giving us the time to continue working on this and making improvements. We were given a full cycle deferral at the September 30th Board of Commission meeting, and since then we have presented some of our updates to the community councils, as well as we'll be going to Planning Commission on November 6th and the Board of Commissioners again on November 20th. So to the community councils, we presented the bulk of our updates. However, we've still needed to refine some of the language and have it reviewed by law. And so we're still working to get that completed in order to have it posted for the public prior to Planning Commission. So I'll just go through some of the major updates that we've made. So based on community feedback from the public, from community councils, the Board of Commissioners, continually speaking to industry experts, we've made significant updates to our draft, mainly in the sections of permitted locations, architectural requirements, noise and maintenance requirements, as well as application and SLUP requirements. So the first main change we made is that major data centers under 100,000 square feet would be permitted in OI and OD with a special land use permit. This is because these we want to allow for some of these more enterprise scale or these medium scale data centers that would be closer to commercial areas. Office distribution as well also already has like a mix of office and industrial use as well. And so because they don't generate a lot of traffic, we thought that this may be a good place to add them in, again, with a SLUP requirement. And then we also, based on community feedback, expanded the distance requirement for light and heavy industrial zoning districts. So instead of 300 feet, we increased that to 500 feet. However, we added a clause in there that if the property is bordering an interstate highway, state roadway, or major arterial road, that they will be permitted at least 300 feet. So we reduced that distance. Based on some of these maps that we generated, I know they're a little hard to see here. We can provide more detailed maps or talk about them in more detail, but we generated these maps to view the amount of available land based on distance from residential. This was just a helpful visualization for us to see the amount of available land. We weren't able to do quite as in-depth an analysis, but it was really helpful in helping us determine that reduction. First, the increase from residential, but then also the reduction across major roadways. Next is our SLUP requirements, or these would actually be required for any application, not just special land use permits. This would be required for any data center application. Again, this was based on community feedback. We added some of these and expanded on our requirements for some of them based on feedback in order to promote transparency and create those layers of accountability. So I'll just go through them quickly. We have the noise impact assessment, water consumption and sustainability plan, energy consumption and sustainability plan. This will include, any sort of solar panels or other renewable resources, stormwater management plan, a lighting plan, which must include dark sky design and environmentally, sensitive design. A transmission line impact assessment. This was a major concern from the community as data centers require a lot of power and Georgia Power the utility provider may need to expand transmission lines. We would want to see that information up front. A tree preservation and reforestation plan, as well as a sewer update plan. And then finally, we added some provisions for redevelopment of existing sites so that special land use permit would not be required for any redevelopment, reuse, renovation, or reconstruction of a site that is an existing industrial site. So we want to do this to promote sustainability as well, adaptive reuse of existing sites in order to preserve some of the undeveloped land that we have. And I'll get into that in just a moment as well. So for some of our architectural requirements, we expanded the building height, so it shall not exceed 75 feet. This is an increase from 50 feet. But that does not include any additional rooftop equipment. So that is an additional 30 feet that would be permitted. We did this again in order to incentivize responsible land use by building up and not out. And so we want to, currently the industrial land uses do not have a height requirement. We did want to add one height requirement. However, we did increase it from our original requirement in order to incentivize them to build up and not out. We do have screening requirements for any rooftop equipment, as well as for noise reduction. And then finally, if a project offsets 45% of their total energy or water use with renewable energy sources, building height shall be increased up to 150 feet. So we wanted to add those sustainability provisions per the request of the community and commissioners in order to promote that sustainability. And then finally, our noise reduction, noise and maintenance requirements. We are requiring sound attenuation for all walls or fences surrounding the development. So they have to show that the walls and the screening do provide sound attenuation. And then also, we reduced the maximum permissible decibels during the day and during the evening. Originally, this was, I think, up to 80 decibels during the day, and we received a lot of comments on that, so we reduced it down to 65 decibels. And then finally, the requirement that generators must meet at least tier 3 emission standards, which is regulated by the EPA, and testing shall not exceed 10 hours per month. I believe the EPA testing is 100 hours annually, but 10 hours per month is easier for us to enforce at the county level. And so we did add that. And then finally, our use table. This is the updated use table just showing we included OD as well as the SLUP requirements for OD, but that's the only substantial change there. So I know I went very quickly through that, but I would be happy to take any of your questions.
Thank you so much, again, for all of the work that you have put in. I just have one brief one before I move on to the committee members and then the rest of the Board of Commissioners. You mentioned that the EPA, in terms of enforcement, no more than 10 per month, and that's sort of easier for the county to wrap around and to mandate, which is great. Is there some type of inspection component of, for the data center itself? So that's one of the things that the community in emails and text messages and some of the calls that I've had is that they want some form of regular inspection. So is there something that speaks to that or addresses that as we're talking about, the enforcement component of it?
Yeah, the ordinance doesn't currently have any special provisions unique to data centers, but by requiring all of these application requirements, we have the documentation that should inspection need to occur, they have that documentation as well as the monthly testing provided.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Commissioner Terry?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Messiah. Thank you to planning staff who's did brief me on this in more detailed fashion a week or 2 weeks ago. So definitely kudos to Tricia and Ava for doing a lot of research. I know that y'all went and looked at all of the other regulations that are out there in America, and I think you've compiled what I like to say is probably the cleanest, greenest, quietest set of regulations. And I think that the thing that's really important for any constituent that may be watching to understand is that we're not approving data centers with this ordinance. We're just creating the regulations, which is how we protect the community. And then, of course, anything that comes after that, you know, if it's a special land use permit, would have to go through a public review process site by site. So I think that's a key protection. A couple things I might push a little bit back on, and that is the definition of properties bordering an interstate roadway, state highway, or major arterial road. It looks like you've already done that analysis in that map, and so if you could provide those two maps, but in a GIS version, so we can like literally zoom in to see how that functionally actually means. Because I see areas in Scottsdale, for instance, and when you say a state highway, I mean Lawrenceville Highway is a state highway, but there's neighborhoods that are on Lawrenceville Highway, right? So an interstate is one thing, because that's a very noisy, loud environment. I don't know if a state or even a major arterial would be anywhere near in terms of the noise or vibrations. I think the intent there was like you're already near a noisy area, you know, it doesn't like, there's just different sort of standards maybe there. So I might suggest we just look at that a little bit with a finer tooth comb as it relates to state and major arterial borders, because you're lowering it to 300 feet from 500 feet. I think this is a great proposal right here on the architectural requirements slide. Well, the 45% of their total energy water usage with renewable energy sources, and so presumably this, in order to read that 45%, is that's a total of energy. And you say water usage, you have to describe that in more details. Is it if they do all water recycling, that means then there's no incentive to do renewable energy, or does there have to be a clearer mix within that 45%?
Yeah, that goes back to their energy consumption and water consumption sustainability plans. So whatever they propose, if it's a rooftop cistern, any green stormwater infrastructure, anything that can help offset, like what they use to essentially cool the facility, if it's renewable from a renewable source, then that would count toward their 45%. Is that what your question is?
Well, I mean, I would break the two things apart, because the issue that we're hearing out, and the Public Service Commission just voted on this on Tuesday, to do 10,000 megawatts of fossil fuel energy. And so I think what we're hearing is sort of what can we do on site that's sort of a green infrastructure, environmentally sound, sustainable practices on the actual development. But then the incentive really is how much additional renewable energy can be placed either on the buildings, and you've done that with the rooftop screening and the fenestrations, but then also if they're actually trying to source some of their own power usage somewhere else on the grid. So I might suggest they're two different buckets, and I wouldn't put renewable energy and water cisterns in the same category. And so I might suggest that you break apart that 45% and have something that's specifically to on-site solar, on-site electric vehicle charging, I think we talked about the generators, battery backup generators, and or sourcing a certain percentage of their power with renewable energy somewhere else on the grid. Because ultimately, Georgia Power is going to say, we're going to supply you with energy, and there's an opportunity for these applications and these developers to say, I would like a certain percentage of my power mix to come from solar, for instance. And so I think that would be good. But so that's the breaking apart. And then I think the last thing I'll mention is, so you mentioned decorative windows, architectural glazed windows, and murals shall count towards fenestrations requirements. And because we have this big art initiative, and honestly, murals, when it comes down to it, is a very minor cost in the grand scheme of building a data center. So would y'all consider an actual requirement for if a data center was in a visible location, and maybe there's something that in your planning world and mind, you can say that this is something, a building that is visible from the roadway, that we actually are asking them to do a substantial mural that is, in essence, something that can be seen. And I mean, if you're building $1 billion asset, a $20,000 mural ain't gonna be a problem. So I might suggest actually a requirement within that. Can't imagine we get any pushback for finding a local artist and going through the DeKalb Council of the Arts to do murals. And this is more just from an aesthetic point of view. And then finally, Madam Chair, I think we're good on the sound buffering. I think what you're doing with 65 decibels is you're basically replicating the noise ordinance already. And so I think if we keep those standards of 65 decibels and 65 during the day, 55 at night, then we're sort of meeting the standards of all the other noises that can be generated.
Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Terry. Commissioner Long-Spears?
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I will try to be brief because I know we have a 4 o'clock stop time. On the architectural requirements, and forgive me if you did mention this when I stepped away, I'm looking at the first bullet point and then the last bullet point. So you've got a building height shall not exceed 75 feet, not including any additional rooftop equipment, a max of 30 feet. So that would be a max of 105 feet. So with the final bullet, you're saying if the project offsets 45% of their total energy water use with renewable energy sources, they can go up to, building height can go up to 150 feet.
Yes, ma'am.
As you were doing your research around the country, is this standard in other areas? Did you take an average? I mean, how did you just land on these numbers?
So this was mostly in conversation with developers as well as research. 50 feet was where we started from.
Okay.
And I know that Virginia had gotten pushback from setting 50 feet because it was too short. And they wanted to see the building go up. Also from our perspective as well, seeing the building expand upwards rather than outwards is a little bit more sustainable, especially because we don't have much industrial. And we want to make sure that we can place as much of either the renewable energy sources, alternative energy sources on the ground or on the roof as we can. And so we wanted to incentivize that through the 150 feet height maximum.
All right, thank you so much. Again, very quickly, the very last slide, the use table, allowed in following land uses, light industrial and then industrial. I just want to make sure I'm understanding what I'm reading. So you have the first row, which is providing the data. You have data center minor, then you have data center major under 100,000 square feet. So if major is under 100,000 square feet, what is minor?
So
under 20,000?
Yes. So minor is up to 20,000 square feet, and then we wanted to add some provisions for a SLUP for that OI and OD that was above 20,000 square feet, but not the maximum of major, which is 500,000 square feet. So we added that 100,000 square feet maximum for OI and OD. We've gotten some feedback. We may make that its own separate category rather than saying major under 100,000 square feet. So
it's
we're
a little
still
confusing.
Yes, yeah. So we've gotten feedback on that already. So yeah, we're looking into that. But yeah, thank you for your question.
You bet.
That
All
tells
right.
us we maybe need to clarify it better.
Could be helpful. All right, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Long-Spears. Commissioner Patrick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for putting this together. This is a good way to sort of see where you guys are moving. My first question is on the buffers. So you're saying properties in M1 and M2 zones shall maintain a minimum of 500 feet from residential zone properties, but do we have that in any existing ordinance right now? Are there any uses that are prohibited to be within 500-foot buffer of an existing residential?
Up to 500 feet, I'm not sure. I know we do have some buffer requirements. I may need to defer to zoning for that question.
Understood. I guess my point is it probably would be wise if we were in line with other buffer requirements within the code so that we have something that's more defensible down the line.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Looking at the next page, the one with all the purple arrows, yeah. Essentially, with this right here, is it fair to say we're asking for an LDP to go with the SLUP? when you're going through the process?
Yes, some of these are required in the land development process. It's really just a matter of what the community wanted in terms of that transparency. They wanted these assurances prior to going to LDP, and so we added these for that transparency.
I think that's a great idea. Although it is a lot of expense on the front end, it sort of brings it to the table when the conversations do happen, and then it's up to, I guess, the staff or the commissioners to be able to explain to the residents what this means when it comes to stormwater or any other concerns that are out there. So I want to say thank you for that component right there. On the next page, so are there any other M1, M2 uses that have a building height requirement?
Rachel's coming up to answer that.
And again, my question is going to be, if nothing else requires that, and I know we've had in other conversations, the notion that if, as you get higher, you sort of have to be mindful of your neighbors already within the code. So help me.
So right now, there is no height requirement at all in the light industrial or industrial uses. So this is the first use that would have one.
It's the only use that would have one.
It is.
If this requirement was not in place, you would still have the other part of the code that's already there that says, as you get higher, as you get closer, you have to be mindful of your neighbors. I guess do that stair stepping so that shadows and shades aren't permanently cast on the property.
So we do have a transitional height buffer, which does regulate how tall you can go depending on what's around you.
Okay. A suggestion might be a reference to that transitional height requirement as opposed to a hard, thou shalt not go above this. Following up with Commissioner Terry, and still on this page right here, just from when I took a tour with ACCG of power plants through end users, and the end user was Meta out in Covington, there was less of an emphasis on on-site energy generation, but there was more of an emphasis, and this might be just Meta's policy, but they had to be able to show that they're offsetting their needs somewhere else within the state of Georgia. And that might be a more practical requirement, and I don't know how we do that through zoning, but if we anticipate using this much power throughout the state of Georgia, our expectation is you're able to show us you can get those offsets. Specific to your project as opposed to this nebulous, hey, there's more power out there.
Yes, absolutely understood. And we have been hesitant to wade into those deep waters because Georgia Power does have their own processes.
Yes,
and
they do.
And it is not as I mean, they have been very transparent with us, but there's some of those things that we just, they don't share, we don't know.
Understood. I get it. They're bigger than we are.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the other thing is, and this is going on with the idea of off-site location, perhaps some way to do battery backup storage. And it may not necessarily be a battery.
Yes.
Maybe it's a huge weight that slowly comes down and it turns the generator that makes energy. But some alternative might be a good idea for that.
Absolutely.
Going on to the next page, all generators shall meet a Tier 3 standards, emission standards. I love that. But testing shall not exceed 10 hours per month. How do we enforce that? And I'm going to say, in your mind, or from the vision of this, who enforces it? Is this a DeKalb PD? Is this the fire? Is this code enforcement? Who does that?
Right. So the way that it's envisioned right now is more of a potential for enforcement. So yes, the same way the noise ordinance would be enforced. So if we understand that there's a problem and then we can measure more than 10 hours of that occurring a month, then they would be found to be in violation. So it would be either our friends in code compliance or in PD.
Can we come up with a definitive answer on that? Because I know oftentimes what happens is great ideas originate with the Board of Commissioners, and then the implementation part is where things fall off, and that gets into who's going to pay for the officers to be there, whichever department it is, whatever agency within the county is there. Like, let's have that conversation on the front end, because what I don't want to do is generate a situation where we've said, hey, there's these expectations here within our code, but when we look to our budget, we're shy on enforcement, and then that really flips off.
Absolutely,
residents.
and that
ticks
goes,
off. Pardon me, I don't want to flip off our residents. Ticks off our residents.
And that goes back to Commissioner Messiah's questions about having some kind of requirement that there's some kind of follow-up or investigation, and so that is the part, I would say that's the largest question. Like, we really are getting very close to being final, and I think that question about, is there an annual inspection or is there some kind of accountability? I think that's our missing link right now.
So what I might suggest is Mr. Marcus Allen, with the tire discussions, has come up with this notion that as you get your business license, you're reported to turn in your manifest that talks about the collection of your tires. Perhaps you can require, as a condition of getting your business license, a manifest that shows your hours of operation in some way that's digitally verified as opposed to being fudged as well.
That's great, thank you. And yeah, we will definitely, we'll definitely be in contact.
I got a couple more questions, and Commissioner Terry, I beg your indulgence. Okay. So how many, and y'all know this, I hate slups. Like, I hate them. But in the M1, M2, how many slups are there? Like, how many uses would require? Is this exceptional? Is this extraordinary?
So in terms of the entire use table, there are a number of things that require a SLUP, even in the heavy industrial. So we recently saw a ready-mix asphalt plant.
Okay.
That's one example. Quarries is another one that comes to mind. And I think even potentially our self-storage now requires a SLUP in the industrial.
Okay.
So I wouldn't call this unique.
Commissioners, I hate slups.
But
Just put that out too. No good comes from a slup in my mind. And the main rationale for that is there will be a lot of public engagement, which we always need to have. But in a couple years, we may not be here. There may be different staff that are left in place to interpret those conversations. And even if you have a video of a meeting, the interpretations of this, that, or the other can be vastly different to the times. And that's the cautionary note that I put in there versus simply saying the conditions are X, Y, or Z. You meet it or you don't.
And I absolutely appreciate that. And, from a staff workload perspective, like, our SLUP isn't our initial go-to either.
Understood.
And that is definitely why in this version of the ordinance, we did include that provision that says if you are taking a former industrial site that has been operating as an industrial site and you're redeveloping it, then no SLUP is required.
Okay.
So that's really our way of trying to both direct future development towards those former industrial sites and give folks a path towards a potentially more expedited permitting process.
Okay. Just a couple more, and then I'm done. On the use table chart that you guys had provided, so, and I didn't notice until Commissioner Spears had mentioned this, so I want to give her credit for that. Data centers, major, under 100,000 square feet, you guys have that as neither permitted or a SLUP for M1, M2. Is that just an oversight, or are you all saying you're not in this piece of land?
Great question. We'll look at that.
Okay. Perfect. And then just a recommendation when it comes to the buffers.
Yes.
150-foot buffer is a large buffer. And although I cannot remember the type of tree it is, there is some type of a pine tree or a cypress tree that it grows very quickly, it grows very wide, and it grows very tall. Thank you. Thank you.
The giant.
The thing that looks like a Christmas tree, but it's not.
Yes, and it does grow very quickly.
It might be a wise suggestion to perhaps look at the 150-foot buffer and then require that both on the property line as well as on the inside of the buffer, that it's double rung with that tree, and then whatever's already there has to be replanted or ensured that it meets a certain minimum density. And I know you guys can have a tree canopy calculation that goes with that, but those trees are notoriously big.
And fluffy.
And fluffy. Yeah, we like fluffy. But they are very effective as a way of doing that. And then just a final thing, I think on the one that had been we had looked at a little bit at, showed that the detention pond had gone a little bit into the buffer.
Yes.
If there's a way to say that a buffer's a buffer and you can't go into a buffer, and so, if you have to shrink down your if you have to shrink down your footprint, we have the density or the height bonuses to go with that.
Exactly.
as long as they don't go too above our trees. But that might be a way to ensure usage of the land, as well as making sure that the residents are well protected in the whole process. So these are just some suggestions from a former planner.
No, we really appreciate that, Commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Patrick, and I appreciate you hitting on certain things like the buffer and the height and some of the questions that I have had, because, you know, you guys are the science and math in so many aspects. The laws, you know, I know my lanes, you know, and so leave the science in some of those other areas to my colleagues here. But as it relates to, you know, I love the idea of making an assessment in terms of the inspection and enforcement, you know, and building that in. I think we should very much, you know, and I need to contribute more to that aspect as well, how we can actually address that. I believe in folks being responsible sort of for the terror they create, you know, for lack of a better word. So maybe it's in the application fee and the cost, you know, what it would cost for us to be able to have an entity, individual, whatever that looks like, to be able to do a certain number of inspections throughout the year, and that's already built into their application fee, or they're having to pay for those particular inspections, you know, depending on how many times it's determined that they need to be had. Because again, you know, whatever that we so creatively, you guys have so creatively come up with, or determined, better yet, is only as good as our ability to be able to enforce it. So just being able to follow through with those enforcement pieces are very important. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Commissioner Bolton?
I think the only question that's left to ask, because they've asked everything already, is when it comes to water consumption and sustainability. My only concerns were in that plan, are we regulating thermal pollution by saying if you're releasing your water, used water, into, for example, South River, what temperature range that has to be at? Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yes, we did look into that, and I believe that would be regulated by EPD, so
Okay.
not something we would address in this, but we did reach out to several people about that. And
So
that was
if-
their response.
If we were to get constituent concerns about it, we would just submit a report to the EPD?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then with some of these things that we're requesting, they record and keep on record in the event that an evaluation of how they're performing is necessary. Are we requiring a length of time that they have to store the information or archive it or anything like that, or is just annually?
I believe it's just
expectation?
annually.
Okay. And is that clearly indicated in the document?
In this ordinance, I don't believe so. Is this in regards to the generator testing or the water consumption? Or, sorry.
Anything that we are asking them to record. I know Commissioner Messiah mentioned some things, Commissioner Patrick just mentioned about the things that we're considering regulating, and you indicated we don't have a regulatory body, but we're asking that they keep record of it in the event that code or PD has to go out.
Sure. Yeah. So currently we don't have anything, but I like the tire example. I can't remember who gave it, but we'll work with Marcus and see what mechanism they're using for that, and see if we can work that in.
Gotcha. Thank you. I yield back.
Commissioner Patrick?
Thank you, Madam Chair. From the chair to my colleague, when it comes to the water temperature concerns you've mentioned, what might be a good idea is simply reference that this is something regulated by EPD.
Sure.
And that way it's acknowledged in the code, and then whoever planner is there later on, years down the road, that has to enforce this, knows to at least check someone's else.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great point. Are there any other questions? Commissioner Terry?
Yeah, and just, I think y'all actually mentioned this on the generator testing, that a lot of the generators are tested like sort of remotely and like online. And so if that was the system that was used, there'd be a log or some sort of recording, and that could be easily audited. Because I think you're exactly right, Mr. Patrick. We don't want to just have someone out there like with a decibel meter. I mean, that's not going to work out. So part of it is trusting the regulations will be followed, but if there was some way to trust but verify, then that would be ideal.
And I would like to say that's Power Secure. That's who does that remote testing. So they're under Georgia Power, and they do it for Tier 4 generators, which are becoming the industry standard. They're still looking into it as well, but they're regulated by the federal EPD essentially. So the EPA. Almost forgot what the name was, but they're regulated. Those generators are regulated by the EPA, but those are Tier 4 that are generated, that are tested remotely, and they have 100 hours annually to test those generators if there's not an outage. So that I just want to make sure that point
Well,
is
I want
clear.
Tier 4 generators.
I was just going to say, why aren't we going for 4?
Why are you getting Tier 3? Come on.
Tier 3 is just as good. It just has, it's a little bit easier to acquire for a lot of these smaller data centers too. So.
Okay, so for like the really big ones, they can get Tier 4.
Well, yes, no, exactly.
4 is bigger than 3.
We toured the Coda building in Midtown Atlanta, and it's a very small data center facility. I think I can't recall the square footage. Yeah, about 88,000 square feet. So it's very small comparatively. And they use Tier 3 generators because they're much smaller. They fit on the smaller footprint of the rooftop. But the Switch data center in Douglas County, they use Tier 4. So it just depends on the capacity that they need in case of an emergency. I think the Tier 3 only provides a certain amount of megawatts. So it's mainly for those smaller facilities.
Okay. Well, so maybe just consider the generator requirements based on the size. Sure. So looking at the major or campus, why don't we require the Tier 4? Sure. And if those indeed are the ones that can be sort of, recorded and have a log of when they're being tested, there's a way to confirm that it's not being over-tested and they're not creating additional sound or noise.
Yes, absolutely.
And they update this every year. So they try to update it every year, so it's going to just keep going up from tiers.
Okay. Yeah, so we can keep updating our ordinance if technology changes.
Yeah, it's like an iPhone essentially. It's one has better features than the other one. So.
Okay, that's a great final point I'll make. Is we should just have some commitment to the community that we will follow the trends, and that anything that we might pass this year. If something comes online next year or in 5 years this is a better technology, it's more energy efficient, it's less noisy or polluting or whatever it might be, let's be in the posture of saying we will, maybe I'm asking y'all to do this, but we can work on it together, is we will just stay educated. And so I think at one point y'all were talking about there's no data center expert in the planning staff. So have y'all considered having some level of certification or expertise within planning and sustainability that in essence would go to the conferences, would be up to date in all the industry standards so that we know we are following the trends each year?
So let me answer a question you didn't ask first. So part of our goal with this and requiring the SLUPs, which we all know are not necessarily our favorite vehicle, but is to allow the flexibility in the process. Especially by requiring all of these studies. Our hope is that as the technology gets better, we'll be able to evaluate the SLUPs based on these studies in a flexible way that doesn't require a constant rewriting of the ordinance, because we know that this is a very fast-moving industry. And then secondly, yes, absolutely. Eva now has to stay with us forever. We have made her sign a 10-year contract, and she can't go anywhere. No, but seriously, absolutely. So this has been a crash course. And Eva and Tricia have done a great job learning everything, but that's obviously going to be something that we take into account going forward is our professional development. Not only are we going to the State Planning Association and the National Planning Association, but now we do have to be more informed on data centers. So
great. All right, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we discussed decommission. So just, decommission efforts where.
And so that's another one of the plans that we are requiring is a decommissioning plan. So we really are trying to take this all the way through so that we really understand when they submit that application, what does the life of this look like? And what are all the potential impacts?
All right, Commissioner Patrick.
Nobody else has to submit a decommissioning plan, if that's the question.
No. That one hurt, man. You're paying attention to me. So one of the ideas, or one of the thoughts I had also was, this is a phenomenal amount of square footage, and we have to acknowledge that right now data centers are hot and sexy. The day they're not,
Yeah.
what do? Which is the idea of the decommissioning. Could we have a requirement to say you have to have excess water capacity so that at the off chance that the data centers are no longer in use, this becomes a viable option for either some type of food processing industry or it becomes an option for housing, as in the oversized water and sewer capacity is already there. And so if data centers aren't a thing and housing becomes more of a crunch issue, there's a way that perhaps a residential developer can come along and, much like the old Sears building at the old Fourth Ward, there's a way to flip it to another use where minimal investment on the front end from someone else coming in. Just a thought, not a...
Yeah, great idea.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Patrick. A lot of great ideas, a lot of great work that has gone into this, and I'm so grateful for everyone's input and trying to make the best out of a situation that's right here at our doorstep, and all we could do is just do the best that we can to try to protect the constituents and as expeditiously as you can. And I think you guys have definitely been doing that, and I thank you all. With that, I'll accept a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you so much for being with us this afternoon.
Amazing job, team.
Yeah, great job.